Welcome to Grappling with the Gray, a forum for promoting an ethical mindset and ethical decision-making to help us more clearly see both sides of complex issues and better navigate the moral challenges of everyday life. I'm Rabbi Yonason Goldson, and I'd like to welcome my guests for today. We have Diane Helbig, who is Chief Improvement Catalyzer at Helbig Enterprises, providing guidance and training to business owners and leaders around the world. Dr. Robyn Odegaard is a Concierge High Performance Psychologist who works with people who have to keep it together because the stakes are too high for them to fall apart, and host of the Quick Hits podcast. And Peter Winnick works with individuals and organizations to build and grow revenue streams through their thought leadership platforms, and is host of the Leveraging Thought Leadership podcast. Thank you all for being with me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And here is today's ethics challenge. A recent article on Substack by Gurwinder outlines in horrifying detail how TikTok is intentionally designed in a way that promotes addiction, encourages irresponsible antisocial behavior, erodes fundamental human values, accelerates mental impairment, and contributes to mass psychological illness. The China-based platform is now the most downloaded app on the web. At the same time, the Chinese Communist Party has banned its own children from access to it. Even the so-called spinach version, which is primarily educational content, is only available to kids for 40 minutes a day between 6 a.m. and 10 p.m. Evidence suggests that the Chinese government sees TikTok as a tool that will lead the United States to committing societal, intellectual, and cultural suicide. And there's good reason to believe they might be right. If so, what is the ethical response individually and collectively? Can and should the government impose electronic warning labels as it did on cigarettes? Should it ban the platform outright? Or does the government restricting our freedoms provide the CCP with a different kind of victory? As individuals, should we boycott the platform? Or can we rely on our own self-discipline to choose beneficial content to manipulate the algorithm in our favor? Should creators attempt to produce beneficial content? Or is contributing to the platform in any matter contributing to the problem? It's a big topic. We may not solve it in half an hour, but we're going to do our best. The floor is open.
I'll dive in.
Please do.
Okay. So my immediate thought is that the situation is not unlike some of the social media platforms we have headquartered in this country. Like, those executives don't let their children on those platforms because they know how addictive they are and how dangerous they are, and yet they're making money from it. So, you know, I think my biggest feeling is the more we do something about it, the more the Chinese government wins, because that's really what they want. I think they want to be able to prove that we aren't as democratic as we say we are, that democracy doesn't work, that you have to have government control over things and things like that. Like, I think there's so much going on there. I really think it's up to us as individuals to understand what we're getting ourselves into and regulate our behavior and teach our children the same sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. So let me add that. So if you look at the incentives and the motivations under, call it whatever, the American social media networks, they're doing plenty of damage, and their incentives and motivations are primarily financial. The more time we spend on, Insta or Facebook or whatever, the more they're selling our time, et cetera, right? And right now, the current economic model that's the incentive it's driving, right? If there was a different model, then it would incent a different behavior. The fact that they're being so explicit about their intent, is so, it's so amazing that, like, hey, we're telling you straight up, this is what we're trying to do, right? So there's no gray about the incentive or the motivation. The question is, what do you do about it, right? And I think, as Yonason teed up, it's not binary. There's sort of a continuum here. At an individual level, like, I don't know, TikTok kind of a guilty pleasure of mine. If I have 3 minutes in between a Zoom call, there's always something silly and ridiculous. And then I get off of it and go, so am I now going to vote for someone I didn't want to vote for? Like, you kind of wonder what the damage is. You know, years ago when I smoked, the immediate gratification was, well, that kind of felt good in the moment, until you read the data and go like, okay, but I'm going to be dead soon. So I think there's a continuum. Is there what's the point of, what is the dosage that is contaminating? And what is it where, a Big Mac every 6 months isn't going to kill you? I don't know the answer to that.
I think for me, the question comes down to you have freedom and you have protection. And if you want 100% freedom, then you're on your own to protect yourself. If you want 100% protection, then you get zero freedom. And we're kind of asking that question is, where is the middle, and what does that look like? And what responsibility do we want big government to have in protecting us from ourselves, not being able to manage our addiction to social media?
Right.
Yeah.
I think that ties back with Peter's point that, I use the example of the labels on cigarettes, and at least now I don't think any of us have any ideological problem with that. But when Mayor Bloomberg tried to ban soda, which is arguably quite unhealthy as well, that was something the public would not tolerate.
But who put forth the whole, like, I have rights? That was PepsiCo. PepsiCo paid for the social pressure of I have rights.
Sure. And so, the point that you all made is that the players in the system are all trying to game it in their own favor. Apparently, the TikTok algorithm is much more effective at tapping into our dopamine register than the others, but they do it too. So now we're back to this question of degrees.
Right. So if it's degrees, the question is if it's as Robyn put it, all or nothing, right? Well, there's a lot of gray in there as well, right? So if you're a parent, you give a kid an iPad, you don't need to feed it or water it anymore, right? Like until it runs out of battery. Like, now, not all iPad use is bad. Some kids are creating masterpieces on iPads, right? Like when I was a kid back in the 1800s, the equivalent of that was Saturday morning TV, but there was only like 3 hours of Magilla Gorilla that we knew was sort of junk food for the brain.
Right.
So I think for those that you have some responsibility over that might, like children or people that don't have their faculties or whatever, it may require some intervention and moderation, right?
But doesn't everything with children? I mean, it's part of being a parent, right? That you need them to learn how to reason and how to, be critical thinkers and figure out what's good for them and what isn't good for them. And at the same time, keeping them from running out into the street and getting hit by a car, So, I feel like that's like that weird seesaw that parents do constantly the entire time their kids are under their roof, so to speak. I guess I keep going back to the cigarette label, because there are things that we do not have the liberty to do, like you have to wear a seatbelt. In some states, you have to wear a helmet when you ride a motorcycle. You can't smoke indoors where I live. And I remember when that came up and people were, it's going to kill the bar business. No, it didn't. It probably made it better. People go outside, smoke, come back in, they're thirsty. I don't know. But so there are some things that we do constrain. So maybe it is a balance of that gray in the middle of, maybe our responsibility is to make sure we're always shining a light on the dangers and offering ideas of what people can do to moderate. And then
I guess I have kind of two thoughts. One, is there an adult human being who doesn't realize that social media is addictive and not something you should do 24 hours in a row? Like, I think we kind of know that, but also the things that you mentioned, Diane, that we constrain them because they're damaging to other people.
that's a good point.
Right. So you don't smoke indoors because
Right.
I don't want to go kill your own lungs. That's fine. Don't kill mine. Wear a
Right.
seatbelt because if you get into an accident and die, it raises everybody's insurance rates.
Yeah.
Wear a helmet because the world doesn't need that many organ donors. No, that's not true. Don't wear a helmet, be an organ donor. I don't know.
That one might
but-
not be.
Right?
Well, the
Exactly.
medical costs that somebody has to pay. if you're not
Right, it's the
insured, yeah.
medical
Yeah,
costs,
right,
that's
that's
it.
right.
So I don't know, do we need the government to tell us TikTok is not good for your brain? Do not be on it for more than
Well-
30 minutes at a time. I don't know.
But, and this is just a question, you know, as I'm thinking, is there the equivalent of secondhand smoke for others' TikTok use, right?
That's
we
what I'm
don't-
wondering.
Again, when I was a kid, it wasn't unusual to get in the back of my grandmother's Pontiac and she was smoking away, and I know she, right? Like, you know, that's what you did with the windows rolled up and like, you know, whatever. If you saw that, if you were on the highway today and saw somebody with the windows rolled up and children in the car, you'd be calling social services today. And we didn't have seat belts and we were sitting on the floor, like
Right.
that, right? So then we realized secondhand smoke and we changed all the laws, whatever. I'm wondering now if there, you know, there's a ton of unknowns about this stuff. There's what we know.
Mhm.
None of it looks pretty good. Longitudinally, we have no idea what it means if you were exposed to this at 5 and go on 20 years. Maybe one of the answers or things to do is to get objective research that starts to study these things longitudinally so we can make smart decisions, because you get opinions involved and you get different people with different incentives. Everybody's got a, you know, a horse in the race, whatever. What does the data actually tell us? So the data with secondhand smoke is non-negotiable, right? It is
Yeah.
bad for other people that have no control over a decision you made. Therefore, you don't have the right to do that anymore.
Right.
Mhm. Mhm.
There's also the immediacy of it. And as while you're smoking, if I have to breathe your smoke, that's happening in the moment.
Yes.
If you are in a car accident and that's going to affect my insurance rates or medical bills, that's way down the line somewhere in a much more amorphous way.
Mhm.
You know, opioids. You know, my libertarian friends think that all drugs should be legal, and I think they are in Scandinavia, but I'm not sure I agree with that as a policy. But again, it becomes, you know, well, what about alcohol? What about marijuana? It's always a question of where we put these lines. And, you know, to go back to your point, Diane, in a perfect world, we'd all be responsible for ourselves, but we know through observation that it's not a perfect world.
Mhm.
I
is
know, but how much responsibility do we have for, you know, I mean, at some point, people are responsible for themselves, whether they're responsible beings or not. You know, I mean, I remember way back when I was younger, watching Judge Judy, and she said to this kid who was like 20 years old, she said, what happened to you before you were 18 is your parents' fault. What happens to you after you're 18 is your fault. You know, it's just, it's part of adulting, as my poor daughter, you know, bemoans. Adulting
Mhm.
is hard. It
Mhm.
is hard. But, and I get, you know, part of what's really bugging me about this is the Chinese government trying to influence the success or failure of our country. That's part of what's got me really bothered.
That
about
was the
this.
question I was going to ask. Is this about the Chinese government?
Right.
If
Well,
if American company was doing it, would be like, all right, y'all are on your own. But because it's the Chinese government, that irks us.
Yeah.
Oh, we
Well, I
are.
think the other piece is, you know, we're for people having a conversation, understanding that TikTok is owned by the Chinese government. You know, you mentioned before, Robyn, that, you know, well, everybody knows when you use social media a lot, that's a bad thing. I wonder what percent of people that download TikTok know, care, whatever. Did that come from Silicon Valley, Denver, or who knows where?
And people
if
make a
you're-
living on it. If you take it away,
No, but I'm saying the typical person in their fog and haze in a Starbucks line downloading that, are they putting that much energy and thought? Because everything is so easy on your phone to just click a button, boom, immediate gratification. You're thinking, why am I downloading this? Who's the incentives? Are they trying to manipulate my behavior? That's proper adulting. Most people don't do that.
no.
You know, we
Yeah,
saw with
right.
COVID, you know, to Diane's point of, you know, what level of choice. There's also an argument that I don't think a lot of people want to say out loud. We saw during COVID, we gave lots of people lots of choices. Many people in this country are incapable of making intelligent decisions,
Yes.
given facts. Forget the politics, just given scientific facts, whether
Do
they're
not confuse the situation with the facts.
right, but you
Can't you
also look
create
at the
your own
Chinese and
facts? Wait a
said,
minute.
you look at some other countries with COVID and said, this is it. This is what you're
Yeah.
doing, period. their death rates and stuff were a lot better than ours. So we had we had a lot of people with a lot of freedoms that are, 6 feet under now. Good for them,
But that's also part of the American story,
Sure,
right?
yeah, exactly.
I mean,
freedom versus protection.
Or as far as Gump would say, stupid is as stupid does. Right?
exactly, right. I just have to say this, that I saw a sweatshirt when I was in California that said, you can't fix stupid, but you can sedate it.
Oh, ouch.
There's this wonderful quote. It was in that Kevin Kline movie where he's a professor, I forget what it's called, where he quoted Aristophanes that the drunk can become sober, the ignorant can become educated, the wicked can repent, but stupid is forever. Such a wonderful quote. Apparently Aristophanes did not actually say it, but
I'm sure.
but maybe he would have if he.
But then we have to go down the whole path of what is stupid. Is stupid the lack of ability to learn, the lack of opportunity to learn, the lack of willingness to learn? I don't know what stupid means.
Yeah, and in that context, that certainly is the point. I mean, this person who doesn't have the capacity is not to be blamed.
Right.
Yeah.
Person,
That's right.
But in this context, people choose to be stupid. They
Yeah,
choose to be
right. Well,
unwise.
it's so much easier. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So, again, I think one of the points we've been talking about is that there does seem to be an intent to cause damage to us culturally. That is the point. I think you made that point, Robyn, that that's really what irks us. And should that make a difference? There is still a quantifiable difference, I think. And when you compare it to, say, some of our platforms, I mean, YouTube, I think, is an absolutely brilliant platform. There is so much of value on there. There's a lot of garbage. And the algorithm is set up to manipulate us.
Yeah.
Right.
Sometimes I wonder, how do you edit your algorithm? Like, how do you tell it, stop showing me that? I don't want to see it.
You have to purposefully look at other stuff.
Right, but that means I have to spend more time on it curating.
I know.
That's.
But I also wonder, you made a comment a little earlier, Jonathan, about immediacy, right, and level of threat. So right now, in the last couple of weeks, we've shot down 4 balloons. So there was an immediate threat, right, or a perceived threat, whatever.
Right.
That someone had to make a decision right now. Well, we could wait 10 years and see what happens with these balloons and blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
And I think part of this is there's a slow drip here, right? And even like if someone were to light up a cigarette sitting next to you, you'd immediately go, cough, cough, I'm uncomfortable. Hey, sir, put that out, right? It's pain, this is like carbon monoxide, right? It's odorless, painless. It's different. I mean, you got to give Chinese credit at some level. It's brilliant, right?
Of course.
Well, yeah, and that's that insidiousness is part of the equation too.
Yeah,
that there's no clear and present danger now, but there's evidence that there will be.
Right. And you don't even feel like crappy, like after you go to eat junk food, like you actually get you're neurologically, biologically wired to get a good feeling versus if you have a really awful meal, junk food, at least me, you feel like crap for a day or two, right? You don't feel great, but you sit there on TikTok for 5 or 10 minutes. It's not like you're like, I think I lost 3 IQ points. Like, no, it kind of doesn't work like that.
So the end of the question you asked, Jonathan, was, as individuals, what are our responsibilities? If we're using it, like watching it, is that bad? Or if we're putting content on the platform, is that bad? Like, I don't know.
I don't know. I feel like I don't watch it that often. My daughter's been on it, for years and puts videos out. They're hysterical. But I've noticed that when I do go on it, I get these same, it's this algorithm thing. So I get these same sorts of stories about children who had cancer or surgery or I don't know what, parents, whatever. And I end up just for hours. It's ridiculous.
By design.
Yeah.
I know. But this
Right,
is why
you've
I
never
avoid
said
it.
to yourself, Diane, I'm going to pick this up and spend 3 hours staring and going like this, right?
Never.
Nobody makes that. Now, when
No.
you go on a movie, you're like, okay, I'm going to watch The Godfather. That's 3 hours. Get some popcorn. This is what I choose to do.
Yeah.
It feels like there's this deception of I'm making a choice. I picked it up and did this, but how
Yeah.
did I wind up here? Right. And that's the part that,
Yeah,
are you really making a choice when your brain's been hijacked? Like there's
that's a
some,
really good question. I
It's
know.
a funny thing I just thought of really right now that I do put usually a weekly video on TikTok and Instagram. I usually get 20 or 30 views on Instagram. On TikTok, I get considerably more. And for a while, I was getting, 50 and 100,000. My biggest one is 200,000 on TikTok.
Wow.
And, talk about
Good
dopamine.
for your
I mean,
ego. Wow.
Right?
it's really exciting to see that level of engagement.
Yeah.
In the last few months, it's really dropped off quite a bit. I don't know if they did something to the algorithm. Hey, TikTok.
Put it back.
But I become less motivated to post when I see I'm not getting that kind of engagement. So there's kind of a different take on it for creators.
Well, and it's funny that this topic is happening right now because I'm actually having a conversation with a grad student that works with me about, can I take my content that I use for YouTube, which is in this format with 4 people with captions in the middle of it? Is there a way that I can shorten it and use it for TikTok in some way? And then I'm like, is that bad? Should I not? Is it good because I'm providing intellectually stimulating conversations rather than garbage? I don't know.
It's become, and this is another thing they're pushing, that TikTok is supposedly a great platform for service providers to market, to share valuable information. I know CPAs who do, who put videos on there. And I just figured, you know what? I'm lucky I can do what I'm doing. There's no way I'm adding another one. Thank
Yeah,
goodness.
some of those how-to videos are absolutely spellbinding. I mean,
I know.
tricks to use for putting a picture on the wall or tying a knot. And, not that I'm really intending on doing that right now. There
now
is
you
a certain value in the content. And
well, there's
yet,
promise of value. There's
well,
a promise.
yeah,
Yeah,
And
that's
it's also
true.
for every kernel of something quasi valuable, there's a lot of junk food, right? There's a
Yeah,
lot.
right.
There's a lot of
yeah.
hack.
Lyndon Johnson said that an elephant for $1 is a great value, but only if you need an elephant, and only if you have $1.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
And I don't get this all part 1, part 2, like that annoys me that you're going to
Oh.
make me go and look at another one to hear the rest of the story.
Follow to get the rest of the story.
Yeah,
That's
no,
manipulative.
no,
Yeah.
it's manipulative. Yeah.
But you
Well, and
do
that's
it-
because they
But
know
you
when
do
you
it,
scroll,
if you watch
you're
the
not
part
gonna
one, you
them.
watch the part
I
two.
don't. I
Oh.
don't. I have
Yeah.
never gone intentionally to see a part 2.
Mhm.
Never.
So
I
if
just don't
everybody
care
does
about
that, then that will stop.
Yeah.
Right? If you tell the algorithm we don't like that, then
Yeah.
that will go away. People will look at their data and say, oh, I'm annoying people, whatever.
So wait, but that brings up an interesting thing that I thought about when I was reading about this topic. Do you think there's a way for us to manipulate this whole thing in the other way for the good of the American society and culture and whatnot? Because we know they're doing it and we know why they're doing it. So knowledge is power. Is there something we could be messaging to people or, in this country or doing that would
Turn the tables.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
So basically you're asking, can we get the American people to think in one mind to work against the Chinese that are providing a dopamine rush?
No.
Because that's not a thing.
That's
This
like
is
that.
subliminal, like when, the Big Mac is in the movie,
Okay.
We'd have to do something subliminal to I don't know.
I think
Is
a lot
that
of it has
ethical?
to.
I don't know.
Well, yeah, but a lot of it has to do with critical mass. I mean,
Yeah.
people as a group tend to sink to the
Sure.
lowest common denominator,
Yes.
That's right.
unless there's really compelling leadership
The mediocre middle.
at best.
Well, there's not
Right.
compelling leadership, so I guess we're not.
Yeah, compelling leadership is not something we've seen much of lately.
We have 5 minutes. We do not have time to talk about compelling leadership in the US.
I want that to be another one,
No.
another topic we talk about.
I don't know, what's the gray there?
That's
to
a
make it
really good
work.
question.
It's one thing the left and the right can agree on, is that there's just nobody to look up to.
I know.
Hmm.
It's the whole mass shooting thing that I keep watching it and thinking, do we understand what we're doing to our children? Like those generations are damaged, are marred forever because we cannot lead. We cannot make decisions that are in someone else's best interest. Sorry, I went totally off the rails, but this is Michigan. I went to Michigan State, so this is really raw for me.
Well, it's really not off the rails. I mean, it's really what we're talking about. To act in a way that's self-indulgent is always going to be the default unless we make a conscious effort not to do that.
Yeah.
And we have to do it individually, and we have to do it collectively. And there's not nearly enough of either going on.
And that takes more energy and effort
Yes.
than the default, because all this stuff plays into our default settings. So I, you know, to go against that grain takes more effort and energy. So
Yeah.
When
And
I talk
intention.
about psychological barriers, I talk about the fact that the cause is in the past, the solution is in the present, but the motivation is in the future. And the hardest thing to do is to take the motivation from the future, bring it to the present and make a change. The easiest thing to do is to allow the present to become the past, which leaves no hope for the future.
Thanks.
fortune cookies.
I know, right?
Now I think I need a drink. I mean,
Actually, it sounds like Orwell.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Sorry, psychologists hate that.
I
Listen, when I was teaching high school, the question that I revisited again and again and again and again is, how do you get people to care?
Yeah. Why?
And I never really came up with a good answer. You can give them the opportunity to care. You can show them why it's good to care, but ultimately it's up to them.
And I wonder if that's something that's built into them when they're children. You know, if you go all the way back to the marshmallow test that they used to do with small children and tell them, here's a marshmallow, you can eat it now, or you can wait and you can have two. And the children who were able to wait were the ones who were more successful later on. And I wonder, and I can't talk intelligently about whether that's nature or nurture, but is that something that's starting with small children, that we're not teaching them that instant gratification is not always the best option?
Right.
Sure.
Right.
Because
Well,
TikTok's full of instant gratification
It really is.
for hours
right?
and hours.
Once again, critical thinking, right? This is what we need
Yeah,
to teach.
I love to say that I was an expert on parenting until I had kids.
Of course.
No, it's so difficult when you're both working and money's tight, and you know you're pulled in so many directions. You're not getting enough sleep.
You can barely adult yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah. You know, here I am. I'm in my 60s, and I'm thinking, gosh, just what happened? Where did it go?
Yeah.
I'd love to. In theory, I'd love to go back. I really don't want to go back, but you know, so many things I'd like to do differently, and I think we all say that.
You know, we do the best we can with what we have at the time. And what I said to my son when he was little was, and we just hope that you don't hate us when you grow up. Like, I just got to hope that I don't do so much bad that.
And save money for therapy.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Don't worry, you'll be right.
Yeah, well, you know, our most difficult child is my children. I think are not listening to this.
You better
well,
hope.
She's probably the most well-adjusted, and my wife says, of course she is. She got the most therapy. And if we could have afforded more therapy, maybe they'd all be doing better.
They'd all be well adjusted. Right. Yeah.
Cool.
I don't think we answered your TikTok question,
I don't.
Jan.
Well, you know, we're not necessarily here to find answers, but at least if we
We're
can
lost in
frame
the morass of the gray.
yeah, if we can frame the question a little more clearly, then we're less lost than we were. And I think that the one point that did emerge that we can all agree on is that ultimately we have to hold ourselves accountable. We can, if we do that, you know, whether or not you're a fan of Jordan Peterson, I love his rule of life: clean up your room. If you can't impose order on an 8x12 space, what makes you think you're going to have any positive impact on the world? And you know, taking care of ourselves, our own circle, is really the best formula for making a difference in the world.
That's right.
So, I thank you all. Peter Winnick, Dr. Robyn, Diane Helbig, thank you for being here. For those who are listening at home or wherever you are, if you have a suggestion for a topic, we'll be happy to take it up. If it's compelling, go to jonasandgoldson.com, use the contact information, and hope to see you next time as we continue to grapple with the gray.
Thank you.
Thank you.